The last time I looked at TNA in 2006, part of the building caught fire and Christian Cage did what everyone thought he was going to do and betray Sting. Well, 2 months have passed since Hard Justice 06, and man, things are really beginning to turn around for TNA as they are slowly building momentum toward what's arguably their greatest period as we look at Bound for Glory 2006, the second ever BFG on October 22nd at the CompuWare Arena in Plymouth Township, kinda Detroit, Michigan. This show was nominated by Glenn Thompson and Jay Pletz over at patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. It's a big deal, this show, because not only is Bound for Glory their biggest show of the year, this is also the first pay-per-view they've done since doing the traditional monthly pay-per-views. First time they've done a show on the road outside of the Impact Zone in Orlando, Florida. This is also where they had their first ever house show earlier in the year. And it's a big weekend for Detroit. Not only is this show happening, but also, more importantly, the World Series is taking place. So the Detroit Tigers are playing at this point, and they're literally playing one of their games like right at the same night as this show. So busy time for Detroiters, to be sure. And man, it's just one small part of a lot of big things happening for TNA at the moment, because they are weeks away from moving up in the schedule on Spike TV to prime time. That's going to be a big deal for them. Also, they've just acquired Kurt Angle. That was the big news that came over the last month leading into this show, was that TNA signed Kurt Angle shortly after his time being released from WWE. And I remember this being a really big deal, because other than like Sting, I would say Kurt Angle is the biggest acquisition TNA ever had in terms of like a big name coming from the other company. And you know, I was kind of two minds about it, because on the one hand, I loved Kurt Angle and I thought he was awesome, but I was also aware of like a lot of the health problems he was going through at the time and worrying, you know, like, is this bad for his body or whatever. But Kurt moving to TNA did obviously move a lot of eyeballs, put a lot of interest on TNA, and I will never forget watching that episode of Impact where he first debuts on the Go Home show leading in to this one, Bound for Glory, where after he had the taped interview on TV, he shows up live and he gets into it with Samoa Joe. He headbutts him, and then he's like, yay, so celebrating. You see that shot of a bloody Samoa Joe rising up behind him. Oh man, that gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, where were you when that happened? It was such a cool moment, and that was just, yeah, a top 5 moment easily for TNA's history. And speaking of names that were rumored to be joining TNA around this time, this is a very interesting point in TNA history, because I believe this is the first and only time as of this moment, because who knows what'll happen a year from now, but I believe it's the first and only time that Chris Jericho has been featured on TNA programming via the music video for Enemy by Fozzy. This was the big promotional number that they ran the week before Bound for Glory to help hype the show, and you had the music video interspersed with some wrestling footage in there, and there's Chris Jericho on TNA programming technically. This was in the middle of his 2 stints in WWE. This is during his hiatus. And I remember like every week there was like speculation and fantasy booking and rumor. Oh man, what if Chris Jericho went to TNA? And so people thought this was going to be kind of the entry point to it. And I believe Chris Jericho himself on his website even posted like a picture of him like doing the pose in front of the logo once just to fuck with people. But it was definitely a hot topic at the time. Would Jericho go? I think that if TNA were able to acquire Kurt Angle and Chris Jericho in the span of like 1 year, man, think about all the different ways like wrestling history would have changed course on that alone. So the opening hype package features the narration from the TNA narration guy where he says, "To be human is to dream. It is the sustenance of our souls." And he goes on about 100 years ago, Henry Ford revitalized cars. And so now we have Detroit. And in a way, TNA is a lot like Ford. And he says, "The dream of TNA is embodied in all the wrestlers you will see performing here tonight. And also, Kurt Angle is here now, and we get some lion roars."
The greatest wrestler are known as Sting.
They say tonight the dream is realized and the dream grows. We go to our first live shot of the arena, and we get that shot through SoCal Val's legs. That was just her job at the time in TNA before she became like a personality. She was just a pair of legs for the camera to fly on through during intros for a while. What a weird gig. 3,600 folks are in the arena tonight. It's a sellout, and like I said, it's the first pay-per-view to be held outside the Impact Zone. Mike Tenay and Don West are on the call. We also get this big pyro display after Mike Tenay is done talking. I love that, like, the announcers do their whole breakdown, and then you get this, like, minute-long sequence of pyro. I'm like, that might have been nice to overlap the two, save a little bit of time. Your first matchup is the Kevin Nash Open Invitational X Division Gauntlet Battle Royal for Bound for Glory. As the leader of Paparazzi Productions and, the self-proclaimed savior of the X Division, Kevin Nash has been a delight to watch, on TNA, like I mentioned. Of course, he missed that #1 contenders match at Hard Justice due to a phantom neck injury of some sort. And he was gone for a little bit, and he came back the week before this show to announce the Kevin Nash Open Invitational Battle Royal Gauntlet for Bound for Glory. And they mentioned some of the names that might be in it. Only name we knew for sure was that Alex Shelley was going to be there. And so you see Kevin Nash coming out with his giant suit and his giant trophy. The first entrant in the match is Austin Starr. The former Austin Aries has returned to TNA with a new name and a new flashy, flamboyant gimmick. He's been all over TV doing vignettes for weeks now. This is his first official match back. The next man in is Sanjay Dutt, and the rules are very similar to a Royal Rumble. It's going to be a new man in every 60 seconds, and it's going to be over-the-top rope eliminations up until the final two, when it's going to be pinfall or submission. They got Kevin Nash on commentary for this one, and I'm so pumped for that, because whether it was WCW or TNA, and no matter what's going on in the ring, I couldn't care less now what's going to happen in this matchup, because as long as Nash is on heads, it's going to be a great day. One of his first lines here, he's like, anyone who's followed my career knows I'm a high flyer. And so these are the greatest high flyers in the world. A very interesting springboard attack by Dutt as Maverick Matt, aka Matt Bentley, shows up next. Jay Lethal comes out next, and Austin Starr's got this little strut. And Nash brings up all the vignettes that ran for Starr, and he goes, boy, I hope this does better than Glacier. Like, holy shit. A1, who is definitely not a traditional X Division guy, comes out next and gets a "You Can't Wrestle" chant. Out comes Zach Gowen, who hits the moonsault, but not before Nash gets in the line of the night, where he does a Johnny Ace impression and says, at least I got the right-legged wrestler. Kazarian's out next. We see Starr trying to lift Gowen up by the empty shorts leg. That was hilarious. Then, oh shit, out comes Serelda, who is taking the longest way to go down a straight line I've ever seen. And Kevin Nash with another great line where he just goes, she's nimble. And holy crap, Serelda has been there for months now and has still not gotten any kind of custom gear. She still looks like basic level 1 CAW here. Serelda somehow sells the low blow, then gets eliminated. A1 is taken out next. Up next, Garçon du Pequan, aka Shark Boy. They do a lot of talk about Alex Shelley on commentary here, where, even West and Tenay are putting over, his career's really turned a corner since aligning himself with Nash and this and that. And they're doing all this talk, and all of a sudden Nash just goes, yeah. Then, speaking of the devil, out comes Shelley next. Then here comes D-Ray 3000, who I'd never heard of before, but they let you know he was a guy from the early days of TNA. He was there in 04 and 05. He teamed up with Shark Boy before, and the old team is reunited here. We get some Fro-Ram action, they say. Maverick Matt is eliminated. Then comes out another member of Paparazzi Productions in Johnny Devine. He eliminates Gowen and mocks the leg. Shelley, the local boy, getting a lot of support from the fans here. In comes primetime Elix Skipper. He starts right out with a buckshot onto Lethal, which turns into a DDT on Shelley. I love that. Kaz goes to the ropes, but then he gets pushed off. Short sleeve Samson himself. Oh my gosh, he was one of the first competitors in WWE's Juniors division, and he was my former boss when I did commentary for Midget Wrestling Warriors. I also love seeing Slick Johnson just running up to him and going for the head slaps while he's making his way to the ring. Meanwhile, Shark Boy and D-Ray are out. Short sleeve goes for a dive. Starr grabs him, takes all day teasing he's going to throw him out. Then out comes Norman Smiley with the local sports reference he's wearing there. Devine and Starr are tripped into the ropes. We get a double wiggle. Samson's hucked out. He chases Slick into the ring, who now thinks that he is participating. Our final official participant is P.D. Williams. He throws Slick Johnson right out, hits the Canadian Destroyer on Lethal, which gets a huge reaction, but Shelley dumps him out right after that. Devine is out. Shelley's launched launched out onto him. It's down to Austin Starr and Jay Lethal. Starr hitting a brainbuster to get the win. He ran the table because he came in at number 1 and won the whole thing. After the match, Nash goes into the ring to present the big bowling trophy. Shelley does not like the attention that Nash is giving Starr here. I'm going to give it 2.5 stars out of 5. I really enjoyed this matchup, in no small part thanks to Kevin Nash on commentary, and there was just this perfect, potent combination of like the athleticism and levity, you know, the silly guys and the more serious X Division guys. And there was just, I thought it was a really good balance, some good kind of ebb and flow with that. And then ending, in a positive way, ending in a strong way, with Austin Starr getting the win, further driving this story in the Paparazzi Productions arc. It's a really good way to open the show, I thought. They show us a recap of what happened last week on Impact, where LAX beat up America's Most Wanted, and then Hernandez hit Gail Kim with the border toss. We see JB in the promo zone with AMW. They're getting ready for their 4-way match. Chris Harris gets really upset about what happened. He's losing his temper over what LAX did to Gail Kim. James Storm comes in, says he can't believe these guys are allowed in the good old US of A, and says call them the new Border Patrol because they're going to kick the dog snot out of them, and their ass kicking might come sooner than they think. Shane Douglas makes his way to the ring. You can see he is preparing for his brave role as Guy Fieri in the new biopic, and he asked Detroit if they're ready to get their ass franchised. He intros Chase Stevens and Andy Douglas, the newly franchised Naturals. And they are just one part of a 4-way tag match to determine the new #1 contenders for the NWA tag titles. So you've got the Naturals, you've got AMW, you have the James Gang, and you have Team 3D, who are back from their recent hiatus, working their way back up the ranks. You have BG James doing the New Age Outlaws intro essentially, but I couldn't take my eye off this one sign, which was like, Kip James fears Hardbody Harrison. I don't know about that, but considering I think Hardbody Harrison is still in jail, I'm sure Billy Gunn has nothing to fear. Bully Ray gets some stuff in on the mic. Kip James says, suck it. We get like a mic hot potato for a second, and Shane Douglas just walks away. We get this crazy Tower of Doom spot halfway through the match with the Naturals and AMW. James Storm is hung up in the Tree of Woe forever, just like Charles Robinson still hanging today. We get this parade of finishers in the ring. Everyone takes turns. James Gang and AMW brawl their way to the outside. Team 3D with a doomsday device on Stevens. The Was Up on Douglas. The Natural Disaster on Devon. We get some friendly fire though. 3D with the 3D onto Andy Douglas for the win. After the bell, we see Shane Douglas coming back out and chastising the Naturals for their loss. I give it 1.5 stars out of 5. There's a lot to try and pack into a small amount of time with that many bodies in there, and especially when the teams are such variety in their styles. Did you notice that Team 3D and the James Gang would kind of sit back and let like AMW and the Naturals do all the crazier stuff, and they just kind of sat back and did their just usual like little talkie spots? JB is outside Samoa Joe's locker room. No word from what happened earlier on the pre-show. Suddenly, Jacob the Snake of Roberts shows up. He is the guest referee for tonight's Monsters Ball match, and he's got some things to say.
Do you really want to see the snake? Why, you want some surprises? Yeah, you like a surprise. I mean, if you really want to, I can get the snake and let you hold it. But I tell you this, my man, sometimes if you hold a snake and you treat it real nice, it does seem to grow a little bit, maybe a little bigger than life. Samoa Joe, he just needs to be ready to do his thing in the ring. All 4 men just do it in the ring. No need to talk about things like this. After all, you have me for a referee. Not a referee, a guide. I don't like stripes, remember that. A guide basically is checking the pulse to see who's still living and who's not. Because the winner is the one left standing, and we both know that what better man to have in a match where there's no rules. Just check things out. Trust me, expect the unexpected. As far as Snake, if you really want to, I'll make damn sure you see him.
Okay then. We get a recap of Samoa Joe stealing Jeff Jarrett's NWA World Title belt back at No Surrender. And for weeks after that, Jarrett and Jim Cornette worked really hard to get the belt back from Joe, and there was a whole storyline with that. And also, Joe is part of a Monsters Ball match with 3 other guys he's barely doing anything with right now. So he definitely feels tacked onto this thing. But the whole thing with Joe, where he's got the belt, this definitely felt like they were testing the waters because the fans wanted to see Joe as champion. Joe winning the non-title match at No Surrender, stealing the belt, saying that he should be the rightful champion because Jeff Jarrett's this, that, and the other thing. I thought that was a really good story to work on. However, we've got something else that you're clearly just killing time for, and that's happening to this show. So sorry, Joe, we're going to keep you on the back burner for a little bit. So we go to the Monsters Ball match now as Raven, Abyss with James Mitchell, Brother Runt, and Samoa Joe all do battle with the special guide / referee, Jake Roberts, and his snake. Why exactly? Who knows? The story is Jake just, he wanted to be part of the hot thing with TNA, and so here he was. I don't think he stays very long after this, but again, this is before DDPY, so he's not out of the darkness yet. Raven coming to the ring in a damn Hannibal Lecter mask. That was weird. You can see Joe is still healing from the cut that Kurt Angle gave him last week on Impact. Match starts out in a big brawl. Runt brings in a chair, and Raven drop toe holds Abyss into it. The crowd loves them some Samoa Joe. Raven and Runt try to work together against Abyss, but it does them no good. Runt gets launched twice, once into the ring and then once right back out of it. I swear this guy catching him has to be a fucking plant in there, because I've never seen a fan ever do this where somebody catches a wrestler getting thrown out, like holds him up in the air and then dumps him back over the barricade. Very rough, mind you. Everyone makes their way out of the ring. Joe with this big twisting dive on all of them. They work their way up the ramp. Raven using his mask as a weapon. He decks Joe and he plummets off the ramp through some conveniently placed tables. Runt and Abyss have now climbed the set. Abyss with a goozle and a choke slam. Holy shit, that landing looked rough. And then we get this big close-up of Jake looking on as we hear something happen off camera. It's Abyss jumping off after Runt. They don't get it live. You just hear the impact. You hear, oh my God, but Jake's just looking, over there. So they have to show it on replay, which at least they got the shot. Worse things have happened. Joe's thrown through another table. Who keeps setting these up? Abyss with the big sit on Raven. I didn't know he was a descendant of the Canadian earthquake. Joe and Abyss fighting over a folding chair. Joe hits the power slam on it. Joe and Raven fight their way out of the ring. Abyss signals for the big old bag of tacks, but Jake tries to stop him. Why? Anyway, Raven tries to DDT Jake, but it gets broken up. Out come the tacks. Joe hits a senton onto Abyss, who splats face first onto them. Poor Abyss, man. He got those tacks out, and I swear 9 times out of 10, he's the one taking them. Joe starts to lock in the clutch. Raven tries to break it up with the chair, but look at the toughness by Joe. Then Jake takes the chair away from Raven and hits the DDT, DDT. Think about it. Muscle buster to Raven. Samoa Joe remains undefeated, and now Joe's gonna kill a sandwich. Then back in the ring, Raven gets snaked by Jake. This one gets 3.5 stars out of 5 for me. TNA at this point's really dialed in on doing the car crash style matches, and this is certainly one of those. I think it's done well. I felt like it felt kind of rushed. It felt like they were definitely abridging some stuff because there's going to be another hardcore style match later in this card, and they probably didn't want to be too redundant. So, I think they were still creative with it. The spot with, Runt and Abyss on the set, which they filmed it a bit differently, but other than that, it was cool. But yeah, it's just it's sheer chaos from bell to bell. Jake being involved was, made for some fun moments, I guess. But as far as the why he's there, who knows? In the promo zone, JB is with EY. Eric Young breathing into a paper bag as he gets ready for his match with Larry Zbyszko. And he says if he wins tonight, he stays and his dream stays alive. But should he lose, he's feeling kind of a lack of confidence about himself when suddenly in barges in Zbyszko wearing the Ribera jacket. And he gives Eric a real verbal lashing. He says, you need ability, you need knowledge, you need experience, and you don't have any of those. And you're weak in the knees. I've got you beat right now. See ya in Larryland, you nitwit. And then JB reminds Eric that he needs confidence. And that is leading us to our loser gets fired match as Zbyszko, the living legend, takes on Eric Young. So Zbyszko has been drunk with power as a member of the championship committee. He's already suffered humiliation once a couple of months back at Slammiversary when Raven shaved his head, and that's why he was wearing the silly wig for so long. and then he gets into EY's business. Zbyszko makes a match where the loser of this 5-man match gets fired. He interferes and costs Eric the match by hitting him with a golf club. So now Jim Cornette has stepped in and said, okay, EY's got his job back, but if he loses to Zbyszko here, then he's fired. But if Zbyszko loses, then he's gone. I love this. Eric gets a huge burst of pyro and nearly suffers a heart attack. Lots of don't fire Eric signs. Big chance for Eric as the match begins. And this matchup is about 85% shtick because it starts off with a lot of stalling, a lot of yay boos. Larry locks up, hits a mule kick, then locks in the abdominal stretch. Eric counters it, Larry swats the referee, and then while he's down, he grabs a foreign object. Ooh, that roll of masking tape. Young hits a low blow of his own. Now Eric has the foreign object and decks Larry with it. The cover, the 3, the win! Eric is back in TNA and Zbyszko is fired. And then the Pied Piper celebrates in the crowd, and everyone puts the ones up for EY, the true tribal chief. I'm going to give it a half star out of 5. You know, in the immortal words of Larry Zbyszko as legend, legends never die! And then he crashes into a big propane tank and explodes. But this was a very silly matchup. It's probably the worst match of the night just because there's the lack of anything happening in it. But, you know, it is what it is. It's a good little moment of levity. Eric Young gets his job back. Zbyszko is done with TNA. He's not coming back. But, you know, it was a good run, Larry.
JCW Lunacy. New episodes every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube. For over 25 years, JCW has delivered the very best in pro wrestling entertainment, bringing fans deep storytelling drama, gut-busting comedy, and unbelievable in-ring action. From wild characters to unforgettable rivalries, JCW has built a legacy that spans generations of fans. Whether you've been watching since day one or you're brand new to the chaos, there's never been a better time to join the madness. See why JCW is the hottest promotion in independent wrestling today, where anything can happen, and usually does.
Oh, take a look at this!
Don't miss a single moment. Tune in every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube and catch up on past episodes right now. JCW Lunacy. It's more than wrestling, it's a way of life.
The show is sponsored by a Mortal Kombat game, and so you see this little promo where clips of Senshi are kind of spliced in with Mortal Kombat, which is a pretty clever ad, a little clever cross-promotion. I think if this was happening today, Senshi would easily have become like DLC for the next Mortal Kombat game or something. Jim Cornette, the public face of TNA management, has arrived. Well, he's made it, but his voice has not. He is incredibly hoarse here, and he says he's sick as a dog and can hardly talk, but would rather be in intensive care than to miss tonight. And he says he knows that, Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle have problems, but this is not the place to settle it. And if Joe gets involved in the main event in any way tonight, then he will be removed from the TNA roster immediately. I thought it was very weird that was always the punishment. Removed from the roster, not just fired. Anyway, we hear Kurt Angle's music play and the Olympic gold medalist making his TNA pay-per-view debut. Kurt's got the microphone and right away he's like, TNA's all the way. TNA's the best, screw the rest. He's really planting his flag here. He tells Cornette he does not need a buffer from Joe because, if I got punked out like I did to him last week, I'd be pissed too. But as he's saying that, oh shit, we hear Samoa Joe's music play, and he makes his way down to the ring, and we got ourselves a scrap. And oh shit, the security runs in to break this up and pull it apart. It takes about a dozen people to struggle to keep these guys apart, and the fans are absolutely loving it. This is a great continuation of the budding rivalry here. It does a good job of kind of tying things up in a bow to explain, hey, not only is Joe going to get fired or removed from the roster if he interferes, they also announce announced he's been ejected after this scene, so it's like it kind of explains why he's not there. Lets Kurt do his own thing in the main event, but you're still planting seeds and putting in that conflict for their eventual matchup, and it's going to be good. The next video says that X Division wrestlers wrestle in a dimension where the body holds no limitations, a dimension where the only size that matters is that of the heart. I love that idea of interdimensional wrestling in TNA. And it puts over Senshi, how he's this world-traveled warrior, and how Chris Sabin puts his career on the line every time he steps foot in the ring. And then he does some finger guns, and you hear a little pew!
To the six-sided ring.
So we go to the rematch from No Surrender for the X Division Championship as Senshi once again defends against Chris Sabin. During that match last month, Sanjay Dutt and Jay Lethal trying their silly games like they were doing at the time and ended up costing Sabin the match. And I love the duo of Dutt and Lethal at this point. They're so good. Like a week or two before this, they're making fun of Senshi by like wearing bald caps, speaking in low voices like this, and also like playing video games. That's them like studying and training for wrestling. Chris Sabin also getting a nice local boy pop here. Quick action right out the gate. A big drop kick to Senshi's send knee has him doing a big bump. Senshi is getting some love from Detroit as well as he starts working over the challenger using those leg scissors effectively. Sabin with a great springboard drop kick onto Senshi, follows up with a big dive to the outside. Senshi counters a powerbomb attempt into a dragon sleeper, wants to go for his cartwheel kick, but Sabin sees it coming and hits a great DDT. Sabin with a top rope Hurricane Rana. Senshi rolls through it, hits the Warrior's way. These guys are just going back and forth here. And after a few attempts, Sabin hits the cradle shock. Senshi locks in the dragon sleeper. Sabin fights out of it, turns it into a small package. Sabin wins and is the new X Division champ. Dutt and Lethal come out to celebrate. Even Jerry Lynn, who's been trying to motivate Sabin lately, giving him some props. I give it 4 stars out of 5. This is a fantastic matchup here, and it's a really great display of what the X Division can do. And I do think it is very mind-boggling to me that they are able to simultaneously book like almost 2 different parts of the X Division, where on the one hand you've got this very serious, credible champion who, you know, holds onto the belt for a long time, has these very impactful matches, while also in this same division you've got Kevin Nash running around with a bunch of other guys in Paparazzi Productions doing a bunch of goofy stuff, and somehow like it all makes sense and it all works when put together. I love this. JB is backstage with Christian Cage, and it's 8 Mile street fight time. Cage telling Jeremy to shut up, and he calls the people of Detroit bums and pieces of crap, and he tells Rhino, even if you were bagging groceries at the supermarket, you still would have accomplished more than most of the people in the arena tonight. And he says, you think the post-concussion syndrome is bad? It's nothing compared to what I'll do to you tonight in front of your friends, your family, and your loved ones. And I won't get invited to the house like in the old days, but that's okay, because your aunt's cooking sucks. And he even throws in some local sports heat, and he says he's not going 7 games. He's going to make the clean sweep, because that's how he rolls. Chest slap, kiss the fingers, point outward. In this deeply personal grudge match, Christian Cage takes on his old friend Rhino in the 8 Mile street fight in a town roughly 40 minutes away from where 8 Mile in question is, but close enough. And hey, speaking of close enough, how about the Lose Yourself sound-alike they play during the hype package for this video?
Enjoy the dream life you have now, because come October 22nd.
So this all stems from Hard Justice a couple of months ago. As we saw in the main event, Christian betrayed Sting and allowed Jeff Jarrett to retain. And you would think we're going to lead to an angle between like Sting and Christian, but we don't, because Sting takes the next couple of months off to hibernate and recharge and transform, getting ready for the world title rematch. So Christian Cage is kind of sitting around, and Rhino's like, WTF, mate, why'd you do that? And then Christian turns on his old friend and gives him a concussion and slams his brains. And so we are going to have ourselves another match between
these 2 guys
here tonight. Interesting pair of entrances here. Christian just walks down the hallway, and then we see Rhino make his way to the ring through the crowd. He's a man of the people. Then he goes up to the stage, gets his pyro, and then he leaves. It was an entrance in reverse. They go outside, and the fighting has begun. We can see there's even some snow on the ground in places as Cage is thrown into a pallet. I love this next part of the match here. They fight their way onto a Zamboni. Rhino like throws Christian face first into it, knocks him out. He's gonna drive it. He drives it like 10 feet, and then he hits a wall, and then he doesn't know where to go, and he's just gonna stop, and they keep going. I love that, because you just know they had all this clearance for him to go out further, and all he had to do was take like a small turn to like the right or whatever to avoid that wall. No, he clips it like by this much, and he is dead in the water. I thought that was so funny. I do like they have the street lights and the street signs along here. Cage yoinks one of those lights up. He wants to use it, but it gets turned around on him. Rhino grabs another street light, but a bunch of cords are caught up in it. Rhino goes for a gore, but X-Jin dinks him with a chair. Can his scrambled brains take this much punishment? Rhino grabs a beer in the crowd and takes a drink. I think this takes place before the whole he's an alcoholic storyline. Back at ringside, Rhino bringing out Chekhov's tables. Christian grabs the street sign and decks Rhino with it. Rhino is now busted open. An unprettier by Christian, but Rhino kicks out. We get some ladder attacks. Back under the ring, Christian has produced 2 metal chairs and a straitjacket. He straps Rhino in there and he leaves him defenseless. He goes for the concerto, but Rhino somehow fights back. Here's an example of using your head. Rhino gets the ref's help to break out of the straitjacket, which gets booed. Which, like, okay, didn't expect that reaction. Were they kind of hoping that Rhino would just like break out of it by himself? Like, that would have been cool, I guess. It's kind of a waste of a spot to think about it. You just have like a straitjacket. Like, how often do you see that in a match? And then like it happens, and then there's like another several minutes in this matchup. So it's like, huh. But yeah, I get the feeling maybe the fans were like, oh, boo, you had help from friends. Going toward the apron, Rhino hits his signature pile driver through the table on the floor. He goes for a gore, but he hurls himself through another table, another unprettier on that table, and another kick out. Christian just piles all the crap atop Rhino, then repeatedly bashes the hell out of the pile, and finally, that's what it takes to keep him down. I'll give it 3.5 stars out of 5. This was a terrific brawl. It was very different from the Monsters Ball match we had earlier, so I'm glad that there was a little differentiated. I was confused because, like, despite, spitting on the road sign and calling all the Detroiters bums, I think Christian Cage won the crowd over by the end of this thing. That was a very confusing reaction I got, but I thought it was a very good story told in the brawl. This is not the end of the Cage-Rhino rivalry. They will have one more matchup that Rhino will win. JB is in the promo zone with LAX, and Conan says it takes a country full of racists to hold them down, but no longer, and you're going to feel what thug life is all about. And after we take those titles from you, we'll do a little gift exchange, and we'll give you a Dirty Sanchez, and you can give us a rusty trombone. Again, Conan sending a lot of mixed messages. You love calling wrestlers gay, but then you threaten to do a lot of gay stuff. And while they build the cage for our next match, we're going to kill some time. Mike Tenay talks about all the buzz surrounding TNA wrestling. Like, hey, the Cardinals manager mentioned them in a press conference the other day, and here's an article with AJ Przinsky, and he kind of mentions TNA in this interview in the World Series program. Wow, what buzz! So up next is 6 Sides of Steel for the NWA Tag Team titles as Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles defend against LAX. 2 months ago at Hard Justice, Styles and Daniels retained the belts against LAX, but then on TV a few weeks later, Homicide and Hernandez won the belts in a border brawl, but then at No Surrender in the rematch, Styles and Daniels won them back at Ultimate X. And so this is one more match in their series. And I will say, a lot of great hype packages on this show. The production and the direction and the stories being told in the hype videos for this show are really off the charts good, so emotional, so powerful, and I think this one is my favorite because they really do a great job highlighting just the violence these two teams have put each other through in the last few months, like the whole beatdown on Daniels when Styles is like trapped on the outside of that cage wall, and the beatdown that Styles took in Mexico. There's a lot of great stuff, a lot of great story being built up in this just classic, babyface heel, feud here. It's a great dichotomy. The fists are flying at the start as the match begins. Then I remember this is going to be a match with tags, and that's just kind of weird to me. Also weird seeing Homicide run the ropes full force over and over again into the cage walls. AJ runs into it face first, and he sells that, and he gets busted open. Maybe the ropes are like a padding, and you can just run full force into them, and then the cage wall won't hurt as much. Daniels gets worked over for a while now. Conan handing a fork into the ring, and Homicide gets to stabbing. He wipes the blood in his cheek. Really cool, like blood stripes there. That was neat. They have Tequila in the ring, and they spit it in Chris's face. Daniels fights back on the top rope and hits a super hip toss. AJ with that beautiful inverted DDT. The champs go on a nice run. They hit the high-low on Homicide. Another double team on Hernandez. Styles doesn't look very comfortable with the fork as he gets some revenge on Homicide here. AJ climbs his way to the top of the cage. That is a very tall height, and there's a great "please don't die" chant from the crowd. Homicide and Daniels are fighting. Hernandez power bombs them all down. AJ with a huge dive off the cage. Then later Hernandez shows the power. He goes to the top of the cage. What the hell? He goes off the top and he misses. And we are all this lady now. Daniels goes for Angel's wings. Conan hands in a coat hanger. Homicide chokes him down. Daniels is pinned. Referee is blind to Conan's helping though. Styles is by himself. He gets laid out. A brutal gringo killer to Styles. LAX wins and regains the titles. After the bell, Conan joins in on the beat and just pounding away at the Fallen Angel. I give it 4 stars out of 5. Hell yes. This was a great blow-off for this feud of theirs. Such brutality, such violence on both sides. To see the baby faces, especially AJ, who's this white meat, clean-cut babyface, to get violent, to use the fork, that was really cool, kind of poetic moment. Yeah, seeing both teams just really bring out the best in each other in this matchup was just, it was aces. It was a lot of fun. And speaking of fun, remember how much fun I had reliving that classic battle at Halloween Havoc 2000 between Sting and Jeff Jarrett? Oh, my heart would be so full if we could get twice as many fake Stings in that match. In this next one, a squadron of silly stingers. Oh, wouldn't that be fun? It is career versus title for the NWA World Championship as Jeff Jarrett defends one more time against Sting. So after the injustice of Hard Justice, the Stinger went on hiatus, and they have set up one more match, career versus title. And like I said, they had to do some creative in order to, build Jeff Jarrett up as a threat and also kind of keep the specter of Sting hanging around and give fans the possibility that he could win with his career on the line. They would bring out like Lex Luger and Buff Bagwell to do his talking for him. I thought that was really interesting. Of course, Samoa Joe stealing the belt for a little bit and then being kind of like threat number 1 to Jarrett. And finally, after weeks of trying, Jarrett would only get the belt back from Joe once he was distracted by fighting Kurt Angle last week. And as what seems to be tradition in professional wrestling, whenever a wrestler shows up to a new organization, preferably if they came in under a cloud of controversy, then the first thing they do once they're at the new place, you make them a special guest enforcer. And that's why Kurt is the 4th man at the ringside area here watching this main event. The Stinger is back and there's been a transformation. He's added color back to his face paint again. And I will say he is looking in great shape. He's actually thinned out a little bit since his last appearance, and he looks more like the Sting of like 96 than say 2006. I think that's kind of interesting, somewhat of a transformation. That was the big return for Sting here. He's very much, you think he kind of learned a lesson from Starrcade 97 where it was an issue of they didn't think he looked in good enough shape. And well, I think him coming back here, proven, really disquieting any nonsense like that. No one's going to say Sting didn't show up prepared for this one. Jarrett is straight up out wrestling Sting for the first few minutes of the matchup. It is very much shades of Starrcade 97, and I don't like that. But I did somewhat agree with Jeff Jarrett's rationale because I listened to his podcast about this show, and he says, hey, you've been gone for 2 months and I've been working, so it would make sense that I would be able to out wrestle you at first. I'm like, God dang it, Jeff, you're kind of right. Sting finally shows signs of life minutes in with a big power bomb. He clotheslines Jarrett out of the ring. Then he and Kurt Angle on the outside immediately just get to shoving. Fighting on the outside, the cameraman just eats it, tripping over the steps. Kurt even throws the ref into the ring to let the other two fight. But no chairs allowed for either of them. Kurt is doing a good job kind of playing it Down the middle, he's chastising, Jarrett. He's chastising Sting. There is this argument on the ramp, and Jarrett just blasts Kurt in the face with the chair in that collision. Back in the ring, Sting fighting out of a sleeper. They do slip up a bit, but they recover into a double cross body, and both guys are down. The referee starts his 10 count. He makes it to 8. He makes it to 9. No one's moving. Is this thing going to end in a draw? No. Kurt Angle slides in and goes, psych, angle slam, bitch. I'm the referee now. What a moment. I was dying after that. That was so incredible. Sting makes a big comeback. Scorpion death drop, but we get a kick out. Jarrett hits La Stroke, but Sting kicks out. Jarrett picks him up for a tombstone. Sting reverses it, and oh my God, that could have gone so wrong. Jeff gets the figure 4 locked in. Then to really rub it in, he transitions into an ankle lock in front of Kurt Angle. Sting fights out of it. He grabs his bat, but Kurt takes it away just in time for an El Kabong by Jarrett. But then Sting hems up, puts on the Scorpion death lock, and Jarrett taps immediately. Sting is the new NWA World Champ for the first time since 1990 and has finally exorcised the demon that is Jeff Jarrett, just in time for him to lose the belt 1 month later by disqualification at Genesis. But boy, what a match this was. What a breath of fresh air after Halloween Havoc 2000. 3 stars for me on this one. Wow, it was actually a competent match between 2 guys and very minimal interference and Kurt getting involved in the story, but in a way that makes sense. And you don't have a bunch of bullshit fake stings or a very obvious betrayal. It's yes, this is exactly what we wanted. What a decisive, just final way to end that. That's how you do it. Sting just says, no, fuck this. I don't sell your El Kabong. I put you in my finisher. You tap. That's it. That is such a satisfying way to do it after the reign of terror that Jarrett has held on this company for as long as he did. This is Jarrett's last world championship reign. He is going home to take care of his family because his first wife is, her health is fading at this point. But him being out of the company, being more of an executive, being less of a talent, this is definitely the end of an era for, Planet Jarrett. And this is the culmination of that big run. And I think it was a really, it was a much better match than Halloween Havoc 2000. So I got to give that to him. And my grade for Bound for Glory 2006 is going to be a B+. What a show this was. Wow, it was a lot of fun. Something for everyone on this show, really, because you have a couple of different variations of hardcore. You've got your X Division, you've got your technical, you've got, your silly, you've got a little bit of everything in here. And I think that is what's beautiful about this time period. It's definitely a high point on the year for TNA as they roll into 2007 with that momentum. And it's definitely one worth watching. There's a lot of fun stuff on this show, and if you're like me, you're gonna close out this show with a smile on your face. But what did you think of BFG 06, and how about this review? Let me know in the comment section. Well, folks, as we have learned this year in 2025, when The Rock and John Cena do business together, it doesn't always turn into long-term magic. But let's jump back to the year 2011, back when these guys were really doing some business, and see what happens when, for the first time, the last time, and the only time, these 2 men will join forces to take on 2 hapless opponents in The Miz and R-Truth. We're going to find out with Survivor Series 2011. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.